Hey everyone, this is Corinne Lafont, and you're here at day 2 at the podcast summit, Between the Lines podcast summit. If you missed day 1, the link should be in the description. If you are watching on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, you'll be able to see that link there. Not necessarily in LinkedIn, but you may. I can't recall, but definitely you'll see day 1's link there. If not, if you follow us, you should be able to see day 1. And when I say us, I mean us who you're seeing in the screen and all the speakers that are listed on the description page. Now, if you watch day 1, which was last week, Wednesday, because this summit is happening every Wednesday for the month of August at the same time, same places. So every Wednesday in August from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. Wherever you feel comfortable, wherever you're connected with us, you'll be able to see it there. Some of the speakers, if you watched last week, we had more speakers last week. It all depends on their availability, so they're jumping in as necessary. Some will be here for the entire summit, some may not. So you may see new faces as well as you may see the same faces. Either way, I'm happy to have them here. And as we go along, you get to learn a little bit more about each of them because we're here to spend 1 hour with you, engage with you, answer your questions, any questions that you have pertaining to podcasting. And at the end, if you watch day 1, you would have noticed that you are invited to a mastermind, and all the explanation will be at the end of today's session. There'll be a video at the end, and of course, the information is going to be shared with you in the chat. Please engage with us if you're listening or watching. Use the comment section, the chat box, wherever you are. There is that facility on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And we're going to feature your questions right here and give you your moment of fame and get your questions answered. Yeah. So let me just acknowledge Leah and Bill. Bill is from Patchwork Hearts Ministry. If you remember, he is more aligned with Christianity. Leah, remind us what you are into again, the name of your podcast and what's it
Hey, it's Hey Queen Thrive, and I'm so excited to be back with you guys on this summit. It is day 1 was incredible, so I'm excited for this conversation in day
I
2.
love how you started us off because that's exactly how I wanted to start off. How was day 1 for you, Leah? Not hearing you, you're muted. Yes.
It was incredible.
Yeah,
I enjoyed having the conversation. I enjoyed connecting. I made sure I followed all of each other that was on here. So
that's
I'm
nice.
like, now I got new podcasts to listen to and new people to connect with. So
New
yeah, it was awesome.
friends. Yeah, new friends. Bill, how is it going for you? And before you respond, let me just let the people know Bill is not hiding. He's not hiding. He actually has his 15-month-old son with him. He's doing a little babysitting for the first time in his life. Okay, I just embellished that. And so
Yeah,
Bill wants us to
it's
see how
interesting.
professional he is for the first time in his life. Okay,
That's right. That's right. He is my firstborn, and so I appreciate everybody. If there's a little bit of background noise, he's
that's
playing
okay.
and not crying. But I'll keep my mic muted when I'm not
That's
talking.
okay. That's
But
okay. That's okay. We
good.
have all been there. We've all been there. We're
Yeah,
rolling with the punches today. So, Bill, how was day one for you?
day one was wonderful. I really enjoyed the diversity. I really
Yeah,
enjoyed talking with people of like mind in the podcasting world, and so
yeah.
it was fascinating to talk with everybody. And it's great to be with you and Leah today because I know we're going to have another great conversation.
Oh, yeah,
It's going to be great. So
for
looking forward
sure.
to it. It's just amazing.
Yeah. Have you had, since I have you on the floor, have you had any response? Anybody has gotten back to you, given you any feedback on it?
A few people have liked it on I think my Facebook or on the LinkedIn, which is great.
Mhm.
So thank you for saying some of the comments helped you and you liked it. Hopefully that will continue today. So
Oh,
we
yeah.
just want to help people.
Awesome. Awesome. Leah, for you, any response, feedback, comments?
Yeah, I definitely made sure I shared it out, and a lot of people were excited that this was going on. Because honestly, in the last couple of weeks, I've had so many people talk to me about podcasting. So podcasting is like a new hot topic. People
Oh,
want to
yeah.
know the ins and outs of podcasting. So yeah, I've definitely had some people asking me like, "When's the next one?" I'm like, "Wednesday." Like, stay tuned.
Wednesday. Yeah, yeah. I keep it at the same time, same place, same everything, so it's consistent. I want to shout out to Russell. Hey, Russell, little, how are you, my darling? Thank you so much for being here. And I'm seeing somebody else. Let me just read it before I show it on the screen. Let me see a question here. I think it is somebody by the name of Drunk watching on YouTube. Do you all feel that if a guest comes on your podcast, they should share the episode on their social media? Leah, since you're on the floor, you want to answer that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that they should. And I will tell you why. When I launched my show a year ago, my first season, I spent a whole lot of time promoting. And I felt like I did not get a chance to enjoy being a podcaster because I was doing all the promoting and all the heavy lifting. And
Oh
so
my
for my
God.
guests in the current season that's getting ready to wrap up, that was actually something I added to my guest form where they had to agree to promote their own episodes. And
Lord,
so I absolutely agree that you should make it a priority for your guests to do the promoting so that you can enjoy just being the podcast host.
I'm going to jump in there before Bill jumps in. I, I, I don't like to use the word expectation, but I would think if you're coming onto my show, it's a partnership. I'm helping you, you're helping me. It is not for you to be like, oh, queen, sit on a throne, and everybody just serves you, and you just walk away like, oh, peasants, you do the rest of the work. You know, it shouldn't be. It's a partnership, and it is to leverage each other's network. So it makes sense. I'm not going to even say an expectation. It makes sense to me that we, as the hosts, the podcasters, we will do our part, but you have to do your part. Remember, if you're a guest, I mean, think about it, Leah and Bill. I would want as many people to know that I was on a podcast, so it would make sense. Bill, what do you think?
I absolutely agree with both of you. I think it's essential for guests to share everything because honestly, when we host a podcast, and I host a lot of guests, just like you guys do,
Mhm.
um, it it enables you to empower their network. Plus, they're the ones that are spotlighting their ministry. I just try and stay out of the way. You know, I try to do less talking when I have a guest and more talking when I don't. So obviously, you know, you have to remember that your guests should have the floor, and they're the ones that need to talk to their audience. So absolutely, share it with your own audience and get it out there however you can, from Mailchimp to social media, however you do that.
Whatever
Whatever,
needs
get
to
it
be
out there.
done. If you notice, and I mean, if persons have been following us from last week's session, the first session, you notice that I listened back and I pulled out little key codes, nuggets that you all said, and I tagged you in it each day leading up to today. There were at least two posts a day featuring you guys, whoever was there last week. And just, the only person I didn't mention was Artie because, I have another week and, everybody's going to be rotated and get their moment of glory. But I did that to be able to keep the momentum, of course, promote you guys, and give you all an opportunity to use the same image. It's a simple quote image, all with the same format, look, everything, just the wordings were different. And to allow people to see, hey, Leah was at this, Bill was at this. What is that about? Podcast Summit, August 3rd. Wow. Is this coming up? And I link back to day one session where they could actually look back at the replay on LinkedIn. So it kept people on the ball, top of mind, you would call that, until today. So yes, drunk from YouTube. I hope you're not drunk right now. And if you are, I hope you're enjoying yourself and safe. So yeah, thank you for that question. There must be a reason why you asked that. But coming to what we're talking about today, where the theme of today is platforms, podcast platforms and editing. And we're going to touch a bit on free versus paid podcasts. Should your podcast be paid or free? And or should it be starting off free first and then paid? We'll get into it. But let's start with the podcast platform. This is a tongue twister I didn't even realize until a while ago. So I have to take my time when I speak. Podcast platforms. And so I would like to know, and remember, this opportunity, this summit is really targeting persons who haven't started a podcast, have been thinking about it, have been sitting on it, wondering, belaboring the point, trying to put all their ducks in a row, like we said last week, when you can really get started right after listening to this. So, what are some of the basic platforms? And when we say platforms, explain what platforms mean to you in the podcasting sense, so that persons who are listening will understand what we mean. So let's start with Leah. What are some podcast platforms that you would suggest to persons as a start, or what you started with? Let's start with your experience.
Yeah, so I am currently on Anchor. And I started with Anchor because it is a free platform. Um,
Amen.
One of the things that I tell people that are interested in starting, definitely do your research. And as you do your research, you want to look for things like, do you get analytical reporting, right? You want to look at what's the storage space look like, the bandwidth look like. Are you going to have like, if you're planning on doing podcasting for long term, like, are you going to have access to that back catalog? Can
Oh
people that
yes.
have not, started with your show from season one go back to season one if you're already in season five, right?
Good
Like, those
point.
are some things that I think that when you're thinking of a podcast platform to choose, because there's a whole bunch of them out there, you want to look at those key things. And so for me, Anchor just had that. They had the analytical reporting, they had the bandwidth and the storage. They allowed me to be able to bring, have my back catalog, which was great for people that may have been tuning into Hey Queen Thrive for the very first time, even though
Mm-hmm.
we're wrapping up the second season.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that when choosing a platform, I would highly suggest doing some key research and then also figuring out, what do you need in a
Mm-hmm.
podcast platform, because each platform has something different, whether it's a free version or a paid version.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And let's come back to the basic questions so that people understand. What do you consider a podcast platform to be? When you say podcast platform, you use Anchor, but how would you define a podcast platform?
I think for me, it's any platform that allows me to do a few things. So Anchor is the hosting, right? It's the hosting platform. It's kind of where you upload your audio and your visual. The
Mm-hmm.
other component for me when I think of my own platform and some of the things that I use is I'm a really good calendar. So if you're going to be interviewing people, you definitely want to have a way where they can book time slots to be interviewed according to
Mhm.
your schedule.
Yeah.
So that's another piece to the platform. And then
Mhm.
you always want to think about the social media aspect, right? Like, how are you going to distribute these episodes? How are people going to be aware
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
when a new episode drops? So
Mhm.
all three of those things to me combines my platform. It's
Awesome.
making sure that I have my hosting site in place,
Mhm.
making sure that I have my calendar in place for people to book time slots, and then making sure I have some type of plan in place for how I'm going to let people know when a new episode airs.
I love how you encapsulate all of that because if I were going to explain it, I probably would have just said the platform like Anchor, just the podcast, where the podcast is going to be watched, listened, that type of thing, downloaded. But you put it as you said, and this takes us back to last week. Do what you need, take what you need. So for you, you need that full cycle sort of a thing. My guests need to book. How am I going to get them to book? Right? Based on my schedule. Okay, we have the podcast. Where am I going to place the podcast? The audio, the video. And then how am I going to follow up? How do people know that something just happened and, promote it? So you're looking at all of that. Bill, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, one of the big things that I look at in podcasting platforms is, user interface, right? You want people to be, able to interact with you and kind of collect in one spot. So
Mm,
I actually use two in conjunction with one another, and they're both phenomenal. Podbean is where I upload all my audio.
I know
It,
Podbean. I didn't know
yep.
Q. How do you spell Q? Put that in the
Uh,
chat for me.
No, no. So I use Puppy, and then the other one I use is called Pod Page.
Okay.
So Pod Page interfaces with all the major different podcast platforms. So each one has a um, way to integrate your page. Like you can do it with Anchor, you can do it with Blog Talk Radio, you can do it with anything.
Hmm.
But what it
Hmm.
does is it allows you to highly customize and organize your stuff, mostly for free. They do have a paid version if you want to pay for the premium,
Hmm.
but it allows you to create playlists, resort stuff. The other thing is it allows you to integrate your mailing list right on the front page. So, like when you go to my site,
Hmm.
patchworkheartradio.org, when you visit that, it actually is a pod page site, and it looks beautiful, and it also allows you to integrate video from YouTube for free. So
Could you,
that's
could
really
you
nice as
share
well.
those links? Could you share those links in the chat for me?
Absolutely. So we go to comments here, right? And then we hit.
Yeah, you can put it there in the comment section. That way, everybody who is watching, listening, or who will be able to see that.
Yeah, I can do that. Yep. So I
Yeah,
will.
that's
I can.
awesome. So for me, I started off on Blog Talk Radio. That was the first place. Blog Talk Radio, I think, came up in my search. And I was like, cool, this is nice, easy. 60 seconds, I was up and running, having my own radio show. The setup, the dashboard in the back was beautiful, easy. It looked like a real radio station. All the lights and everything, and things to click. And I could have done my social media behind there. I could see analytics. Of course, that was a free version, and I could have upgraded if I want. And of course, with Blog Talk Radio, because I suggest that even in my coaching programs to my clients that start off with Blog Talk Radio. You want to test, get a feel for it. Blog Talk Radio is a place to be. You could stay there if you want because they have great analytics. They support you. I don't know. I mean, it's been years, so I don't know if they have done any upgrades. You can check it out. But it's really cool. Even the paid is worth the paid because I did both the free and I did upgrade. It's worth it. Like I said, I'm not sure what they're up to these days, but it's worth checking out. I am with Anchor, like you, Leah. I'm with Anchor. They're pretty cool. The analytics takes a while to come in because there must be a sort of minimum for the analytics to come in. So you're there waiting, and it's linked to Spotify, I think, in order right for the analytics to start generating. So that could be a little bit frustrating while you're waiting for that. Um, but what I like about Anchor too is that it allows you to collect donations. It allows you, persons can support your program by giving you whatever amount. There's no specific amount they could decide to pour into you. So, for example, as I said there are persons who have a religious sort of podcast, praise and worship, it could be whatever, and they are looking to build, their ministry. Look at Bill, it's something like that. Build their ministry. Um, or it could be for fundraising for a particular cause. I don't know. Anchor to me would be a good place because you can collect the funds through there. It also allows you to leave a voice message. I don't know if you have used that, Leah, voice message, and that voice message based on the episode the listener has listened to, they can hear their question or voice coming into as part of the episode. So you can find yourself being part of the episode. And of course you could do sponsorship when we get to that, but it allows for sponsorship where you could put ads, jingles, whatever it is inside there as well. So I mean it has scalability to me. It's easy. I think it allows you to also embed. So, for example, if you want to transfer it to your website or something, you can just take it and put it across, or even have a website just for that alone. I don't know. But Anchor provides all of that for you, and it's working for me now. And according to Leah, it's what you need. Now, between Blog Talk Radio and Anchor, I went to Libsyn. And Libsyn is a paid. I think they offer free as well. Most of these podcast platforms allow for a freemium, so free moving into paid. And Libsyn is good. Libsyn is very good. It's just that I don't know, something about it. It just felt it wasn't me. I like easy. I like simple. It's very intricate. A lot of moving parts. I don't want all of that. And as Leah said, when you're a podcaster, people don't realize what kind of work it takes to prepare for a guest properly and to really come across professional. You might not have all the different scenarios going around you and have things flying in and out and all of that, but to really have an engaging intellectual conversation that can add value to your target audience or to that guest target audience, it takes work. It takes work. And so it shouldn't be taken, sorry, be taken lightly. I'm seeing, um, right. Okay. So Bill, are you going to put it in the comments section?
I want to, but for some reason when I go
It's
to the
not
comment,
allowing you.
it's not allowing
Yeah.
me to do
So
it.
put it in a private chat for me. Probably I alone can do it in the back end here. Put it in the private chat and I'll copy it over in the comments. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I think I just did. I used Podpage in conjunction with Podbean, is what I said. But I can do. I want to put the links Podpage, page.com, and
Podpage.com.
yep, and Podbean.com are the two there. Yeah, for some reason it wouldn't let me.
Yeah, that's okay. I just put it there for persons who want to
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So guys, you have that. Let me come back here. So yeah, podcast platforms. Is there any other platforms you think, Bill, that persons can look at? That's simple, they can get started right away, easy interface, user friendly, because we have to look at it from both sides. It's not just from our side, it's also to make it easy for the listener and watcher. Is there any other suggestion?
I haven't outside of the ones you guys mentioned. I haven't interfaced a lot with them. I know that there's Spreaker.
Oh
Spreaker is
yeah.
one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and for Leah, you mentioned earlier about the number of episodes that are present, and available on the back end. Spreaker really limits that, even on their most paid platform.
Mm,
They I think they only allow like 100 episodes of back, so that's a big consideration. But I would think the main ones like Podbean, Blog Talk,
mm-hmm.
Anchor, those are the ones that I'd want to be on. They
Mm-hmm.
all interface with all the social media. It's one click, and it sends out your
Mm-hmm.
podcast to everything.
That's
Um,
right.
I'll just be super transparent and tell people, like, I pay $108 a year for Podbean, and it covers everything. So
Wow.
so
I've looked at Podbean. I don't know for what reason I didn't select them. Probably because I'm happy with Anchor. But
yeah.
I don't know. At some point, and the thing about it, Bill and Leah, is that You don't have to stay and spend the rest of your life with with anyone. Look at how I moved from Blog Talk to Libsyn to Anchor. I'm sure I missed out a few in between. You know, I could shift. There is nothing that has me committed. I'm not married to any one of them. And even if I were, there's something called divorce. I could divorce them and move along because you see, your life has changed, your business has changed, your needs have changed. You know, probably your target audience may have changed because we have to shift according to the lifestyle too of our target audience. It's not about us. I keep telling people it's not about us. It's about our clients, our guests, our target audience. And if they are not hanging a particular place or interested in a place, we're supposed to shift with that. We are not supposed to force what we want onto people. We have to shift with it and keep adding value. I see Leah nodding her head. She's like, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the beautiful thing about being a podcaster, right? Is that it really is your show and you can control it the way you want to control it. It can be as long as you want it to, cuz that's like the number one question I hear all the time. Well, how
yeah,
many episodes do I do? As many episodes as you want to
if you
do,
want.
right? like there's no like
Yeah,
rigid guideline of like you have to put out 20 episodes. Like if I tell people I listen to podcasts, I'm an avid podcast listener as well as a host, and I listen to podcasts who have had episodes where it's like 10 episodes and it's like the season is done. Like it's really your show. You can do with it however you want to
you
do.
want, right? You could do once a week, you could do every day, you can do it for 15 minutes. I say to me, I recommend to persons 15 minutes at minimum. I think I've even have I ever done 5? There are some people who do 2 minutes. You know, it could be a tips, like a sort of tips podcast. They just give a quick tip and they tell you. And that's if it's them alone speaking. Obviously, you can't have a guest for 2 minutes, right? So it depends on what you want to do. Some people don't want to sit down and engage like this. They just don't have it in them. They prefer to hear themselves speak, give a tip, and move along. And they may sit down for like an hour and generate these tips and just shoot them out, just distribute them for the month or 3 months if it's once a week or whatever. So you definitely could do what you want. Yeah. Awesome. So editing, this is where you come in mainly, Bill. Editing. Because I don't edit my podcast. Let me tell you, I don't edit mine. I see Leah is doing the same thing. I don't edit. It's raw and real. And let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. Because I'm coming from a place of I don't want to make people feel that it's impossible to do this. That is why I don't edit. I don't create a situation that it seems like I am superhuman or I'm special. I mean, I know I'm special, but you know, in that kind of way to make people feel they can't do it. If I am doing it, you can too. You could even be better than me. Okay. But I am not going out of my way to jump through hoops just to please I don't know who out there. And you have to know as well that there will always be that one person who is going to criticize. One, just one that is going to criticize. And you don't have to take them on. You don't have to meet their needs. You're not here to be a people pleaser and to serve. Leah, I see you're mouthing to say something. Jump in.
Yeah, I was gonna say before Bill goes off, and it just goes back to what I said last week. Done is better than perfect. You know, I think one of the things that I had to learn as a podcaster was that I did not have to be perfect when I showed up. You know, like I've had guests where they're like, "Oh my god, is it okay if I, cuss? If it's be you, like if that's what you have to do to get the point
Point
across,
across.
do it." Right, like I'm
Yeah,
not gonna sit here and like be
yeah,
so
yeah.
rigid where it's like please don't show up. Like are there podcasters that do that? Yes, but I created a show where I wanted everybody to be their authentic self, and
Be
it's like
you.
having a conversation with your girlfriends and we just gonna
Oh,
talk about
yes.
it however we talk about it. But for me, I'm like you, Corey. Like editing for me is I would rather be real, raw, and authentic. Now, unless the quality of the sound is like really, really bad, then okay, I'll edit. Or I
Mm.
have to pause a few times because somebody's Wi-Fi is not like then I'll.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
for the most part, I try to stay away from editing because that's not my
yeah.
lane.
And that takes away from the joy. And we were talking about that earlier, Leah. You're like, I'm not even getting to enjoy being a podcaster. It becomes robotic. It just takes away that from you. I don't do any form of editing, even with Wi-Fi, even with them falling off. None of that, because these things happen. I have no control over the internet. These things happen. And the main thing I think I want people to learn from that is, how do you come back? How do you fill the dead air? How do you stay liquid, like we say on SWAT? How do you stay liquid? Do you panic on air in front of everybody watching you? Or do you show people you remain calm? Under pressure, under stress, under whatever it is. That's really where the key lesson is. Bill, jump in here with editing, because Leah and I not editing, so it's only you we could depend on here.
Well, for me, from an editing perspective, you have to remember that I am kind of a different, um, beast, because I do professional video and audio editing for people. So um, I do I edit for radio. So I come from a background of radio. I think there was
Mhm.
somebody last week that was also with us that was
Yes.
coming from a background of radio. And when you're trained in that, you just kind of react. Now the editing that I'm talking about is making it sound pretty. So I'm not talking about content editing.
Okay.
I used to work for a radio station out in Illinois, that asked me to cut out every single and ah,
Wow.
any vocalized pauses, to the point where after 3 or 4 years of them not listening to me, I just quit,
Wow.
because it reduces the authenticity, and it's not even radio. Podcasting and radio is one thing. It is a public conversation. That's how I describe it. It's a public
Yes.
conversation. And so you want it to be authentic. I don't care if you use a bunch of vocalized pauses and say ah ooh.
Yes.
I don't care. And even you mentioned profanity, Leah. Like, you know, in a religious realm, I try to avoid that. But um, if people are struggling with that, and they need it as a crutch, fine, use it. Like, what do you want me to do about it? So we need to be so we need to have an authenticity
Yes.
to ourselves. But when it comes to sounding pretty, like, I become rather creative with my stuff. Like, I used to use the Wizard of Oz in the beginning of my podcast,
Mm-hmm.
like clips of audio from Wizard of Oz. I think right
Oh,
yeah, I think right now I have a clip of We Are Marshall, from different shows and different things that relate to my show, right?
right.
I've used quotes from Superman before, like, and just cutting in the audio to make it sound pretty, getting
Mm.
yourself with background music,
Yes.
and things like that. Those little things elevate it, and especially with a younger generation of people,
Mm-hmm.
they expect things to sound and look great. And if they don't sound and look great, people often don't engage with it. So they want authenticity, but they also want it to look clean and sound
Mm-hmm.
clean.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I do just a little bit of that kind of editing. The other thing is, you have sometimes have to edit for time on radio.
Yeah.
So depending on, you might have an opportunity out there to carry your show on a radio station. Let's just say that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the radio station only has a certain hour block,
That's
right?
right.
And, for you. So, hey, they're going to give you 29 minutes and 45 seconds to air your show. And if you can't cut your show to 29 minutes and 45 seconds, you're not going to be on the radio. So,
Wow.
these are just the, considerations that I would, just tell people, hey, if you have an opportunity like that, it's easier to start your show with that structure. Like,
Mm-hmm.
typically, what I say, Young Catholics Respond is a 27-minute long show with 2 hours, or with 2 minutes and 45 seconds of bumpers and commercials.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's how. And then if a radio station wants to come to me and say, "Hey, I can give it to you for this," I go, "Okay, here it is. It's cut, it's packaged, and they can air it with no questions asked." So again, you might have those connections, you might not, but it's easier to start with the structure, um, and And then you can tell your guests, hey, listen, this is two 13-minute long segments. And so I'm going to be talking to you for, 13 and a half minutes. We're not going to cut anything, but when I say wrap up, we're going to go to a break. And when I
Mhm.
say wrap up the show, we're going to wrap it up. And you
Yeah.
just keep an eye on the clock and you just do it. And so that's, kind of my form of editing. But when it comes to content, I believe the same thing you guys do: authenticity. Don't
Yeah.
cut out the ums and ahs. Just let it be what it's going to be. It's a public conversation.
You said something there, Bill, that had my mind. When you said a couple of things, I'm going to try and remember as I go along. But one that stuck in my mind is for traditional radio. And even though we're in the digital space, traditional radio and traditional media is still around. It's not going to go anywhere. And we need to be able to bridge that digital divide. Because a lot of people, I mean, while we could track and have analytics for online, like we said last week, traditional doesn't provide that. So we need to be able to bridge that. And when you said traditional will have specific segments, so if like for me, I do half an hour in my podcast, a half an hour. It may go a little above, it may go a little below, but generally around 30 minutes. When I first started off, it was like 15 minutes minimum. Well, maximum 15 minutes. And I'm thinking to myself, if somebody listening to this and they have intentions of moving towards, because we're talking scaling as well, you're not coming in here to stay a baby. You're going to grow. You want to grow. You should maybe, like what Bill says, look into the traditional stations and ask them if you were to provide audio content for them eventually to, move to that space of traditional. So you would have your show online as a podcast, and you can also have it supported on traditional media. What format do they want it in? So that when you are doing your podcast, you keep that structure in mind. And that's one way to kind of bridge that digital divide. You're still taking some of the concepts and formats from traditional into your online so that it allows you not to have to do over. You get what I'm saying, Leon? Bill? It doesn't allow you to do over again. And you have to say, oh my God, I have to sit down and edit this thing. You already have the format that could fit traditional media. So if somebody calls you with an opportunity, you're ready. Yeah. So it would be good to do a little bit of research in the traditional media, find out how they do things, what's the format, where it could fit, where best it could fit, that kind of thing. When we get to sponsorship, we will talk about that, but at least have that going in so that when you're doing your online show, your podcast, you already have that format. So when you have to take a break, you say, we'll go to a break, even if it's just silence, or you might have something like, for instance, for me, I have my intro video. You could have a video playing within that time. So it's easy to clip it out as opposed to dead air. You could decide how you want to do it. But I think that's a very, very valid point, Bill. Yeah? Yeah, that's really good. Leah, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was gonna say what Bill was talking about the structure. I think is absolutely vital, especially as a new podcaster, because
Mm-hmm.
it gives you a guideline in a sense of what to follow.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the other reason why I recommend for new podcasters having like a podcast script, right? So knowing where you're placing your intro, where you're placing the jingle, where you're good, if you're going to run an ad, where you're
Yeah,
placing the ad, like that kind of, especially if you're a visual person, because I'm very visual, like it helps you
yeah.
kind of be like, okay, I know about 10 minutes into the show we're
Mm-hmm.
cutting for break.
Yeah,
So, and like you said, it helps with the tradition, because podcasting is like the digital form of radio, right?
of course.
But it helps you so that when you do decide, hey, I might want to convert my show to a radio show, now you are already accustomed to how radio does it. So it's a smooth transition
That's
versus
right.
them telling you, well, your show is a little too long and we need to cut it down.
Yeah, yeah. And but I have a question for Bill. So persons are now moving from, or not necessarily moving, they're adding video to their podcast. So you're doing both audio and video. What are some sort of editing? Sorry, I nearly said auditing. Editing software that you would suggest to persons as a beginner if they were to do it themselves, or would you, or Leah, even though Leah and I are not editing, would you, Bill, as a professional person in this field, suggest outsourcing it because I don't like it and I don't want to do it, and Leah don't want to do it either. So, so for us, I would outsource it. I'd be like, you handle that. I like the fun of posting and setting it up and doing all the other things. I don't want to do editing.
Yep.
So, Bill, what would you suggest as some editing software? And would you tell a new podcaster do everything
Yeah.
or outsource?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, it's fascinating how many people I have come to me and say, I don't want to deal with this, but you know how to deal with it, so just deal with it. And exactly what you just said, and I'm happy to do it. I'm really happy to do it. The so yeah, outsourcing it to somebody like myself to handle that, putting in the professional bumpers and
Yeah.
intros and outros. Yeah, and I'm also happy to have those conversations with a lot of different people to help them, do brand awareness, content awareness, all that kind of stuff, because it really does play into the whole system.
Hmm.
But I will say, as far as editing, like, tools, right? There's a free one out there called Audacity. It's
Love
available.
Audacity.
Yeah,
Love it.
so it's available on both Apple and your PCs or whatever, right? And you can get it there. Uh, it's very free. It's very easy to use. Doesn't
No,
have
it's
all the
not. Don't lie, Bill. Don't lie. It's not that easy. I just know the basics
okay.
and I stick to the basics. It's a very powerful tool if you know how to use it.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I'm sorry. I should say, I, again, full disclosure, this is what I studied in college.
Right. Please,
So,
please say that, Bill. Please say that.
yeah, so this is what I studied in college, and this is what I do professionally. So because of that, it's a very basic editor for me. For some other people out there, it probably is a little more complicated. Maybe I should do a series of YouTube videos on how to use Audacity.
You
Um,
should.
you know,
Because when I look at Audacity, it's like the Matrix. I just see numbers. I'm like, what the
yeah,
hell?
yeah. What is all that stuff,
What
and
is
what
all
does it all
that?
mean? Yeah,
Right?
yeah. So, yeah, it is a wonderful tool, though. It's free. I mean, there's GarageBand if you have
I
Mac.
remember GarageBand.
There's
Yes.
that. The one I use is a professional audio. Pretty much the industry standard. It's called Adobe Audition.
Oh my
Um,
God, Adobe,
um,
yes. Mhm.
so that is paid $29 a month, 29.99, $30 a month,
Mhm.
and it really is for professional editors who edit audio for even Hollywood movies. So it's something that again, I went to school for this. It's what I use, and it just gives you a ton of tools.
Yeah.
Like you were talking about earlier. Like, okay, if there's somebody that's got bad audio, they're on a phone disconnection. Like, if you know what you're doing with 2 clicks of the mouse, you can boost audio. You can level the different audio levels. Um, you know, so if you're an audio editor and you want to learn that stuff, and there's plenty of choruses, like Adobe offers the choruses, where
Mhm.
through the software.
Mhm.
So you can take a course and learn how to,
Me and Leah are
use
not
it.
doing that, Bill. Me and Leah are
But
not doing that,
but no,
right?
outsource it. Just outsource it. I'll make it sound pretty.
Me and Leah are not doing that. And it's okay. Isn't that right, Leah? It's okay. All right. You don't have to be what they call it, cook and bottle washer, everybody all in one. No, right? We just want to look pretty on TV. We want to look pretty on radio, sound pretty on radio. We want to, challenge the guests, add value. We don't want to be doing all the 2 clicks thing according to what Bill said, just in 2 clicks. You know how long it will take me and Leah to do 2 clicks? No, we're not. We're not going there with you, Bill. We're not going there with you. Okay? So so people just outsource it to Bill. That's what you do. Just follow the beeline to Bill. All
Yep,
right?
happy to do it. You guys have
Yes,
my
he's quite happy. Can't you tell from his voice? He's quite happy to do it. So so let's move into free versus paid podcast. I know that is a sort of sensitive thing for some people. I have a paid podcast. It took me 8 years plus before I went to that. I have to keep saying that because people think I just wake up one morning, start my podcast, and I decide to charge them. No, I put in the sacrifice, the work for 8 years, okay, for free. All right, moving from Blog Talk to Libsyn to Anchor to all sort of things over those 8 years. Watch the space, took a little break, watch the space, come back again. You know, to decide to make that bold move, because I know normally in the podcasting world, people think it's supposed to be free, and you see, this is a mindset that I cannot understand. You think something is free and you feel everybody is obligated to offer it free because you think it should be free. What you think is what you think. It doesn't mean to say that everybody needs to go with what you think. Okay? And the majority might be staying free as a result of other persons having that expectation that you should offer your podcast free or else you will not be a guest on your show. I took the risk and it paid off for me. Yes, there are times when there'll be ups and downs, but it pays off for me. And I'm not talking about money wise. It pays off in terms of the value of the clients, the relationships I have with the persons who pay to be on my podcast. And I can tell you, I mean, if you watch my reel and my wall of fame, as I call it, persons who have been on my podcast, they are repeat guests and they pay each time. I don't beg them, I don't ask them, they just go back and book, go back and book. And they refer other people to me. Okay. And we also do more work after that. As a result of people being guests on my show, we are here today. Bill, you are a guest. Leah, you are a guest. There's so many collaborative opportunities as a result of the relationship. So I don't just say, okay, you pay to be on my show. That's it, I take your money. No, I look for opportunities that we can do work together. I'm not charging anybody to be here. You understand what I'm saying? We This is how things work. But I see my podcast after putting in 8 years of freeness into it as a business. It's part of my business. I am actually, it's my time. I have to do all the creative work. I have to do, prepare for you, whatever it is. Make sure you get the visibility out there. And so, why shouldn't I charge for it? So, free versus paid. And when do you, like I said, I started off with free for 8 years. Yeah. People who are now coming to get to know me and maybe hearing and want to be on my show feel I am paid all along. No, my darling. I did the work. I put in the time. It comes just like, you study for so long, you put in the time. Now you come out, you have your business. You want me to still do things for free? You have to make back that money. You have to make back that investment. I have poured into myself, invested, done a lot of stuff over the years. And so I deserve that. And I'm saying this for all the others. But when you start off, I would not suggest starting off paid. You have to get your feet, your whole body wet and get a lay of the land before you do that. And you have to be brave and bold and be willing to deal with the persons who may say no, and that's okay, because I can tell you, they are few and far between. There are very few people who will say, I don't pay for this. Very, very few, right? And you may not get guests for a while, and that's okay. You must know the value of what you're offering, and you must know your worth. Yeah. So, Leah, let's start with you. Your thoughts on free versus paid.
Yeah, like you, I started off free. As I and the reason why I did so is that I believe that as you're starting off, you're really in the building phase, right?
Of
Nobody
course.
knows you,
Mhm,
nobody's heard of you, nobody's heard
mhm,
of your show. So I think that before you can get to the place of wanting to monetize, your focus really should be growing your listenership.
mhm,
Because as you grow your listenership, as you get the downloads and the numbers and all those things, now that's the leverage you need to be able to say, hey, it's going to cost you $50 to get on the show, right?
mhm,
And this is why. I think that should be the focus for new podcasts. Is as I gear up for season 3 of my show, I'm now going into a paid direction, but that's because for 2 years I have spent leveraging and
yeah,
growing my listenership to over 1,700 plays.
yeah,
So it's important to focus on growing in the first year or so of your
mhm,
show.
mhm,
And then as you grow, think of ways that you can monetize. And it could be sponsors, it could be ads, it could just be you charging, for them to say if somebody wants their episode aired on a certain time because they're promoting something, you
Yeah.
charge them to expedite.
Yeah.
There's so
What?
many ways that you can do it besides
Yeah.
charging your guests to
Hmm.
come on the show. But I definitely think that at some point you should be monetizing because podcasting is a form of business.
It is. If traditional radio is, why shouldn't a podcast be? All right. And you mentioned things about downloads and listenership and all of these things. That's how you will leverage yours. For me, it's not a matter of that. Because people may come and say, what's your listenership? What's your following? I'll tell you something. There are people, some people have 17,000 followers. Who is really engaging with you? Who is really organic? You don't know any of them and they don't know you. They don't remember your name. But I could tell you, the few followers I have, they know me very well. They could actually reach out to me via email or call me on the phone. You see what I'm saying? So for me, the reason why I went to paid to is because I know the experience. I come from a place of experience. I'm providing an opportunity and experience for you. When you come onto my show, and I mean, you both have been guests, you could say, you could speak to this, you can say, emphatically, this was my experience. I enjoyed it. I could use it for whatever it is. It's engaging. Yes, it was an enlightening conversation, whatever it is, the experience, the opportunity. And that's what I leverage because what you get with me, you don't get anywhere else. And I've had my guests say that to me, Corinne. Nobody has ever asked me this, or nobody has ever showcased my website at the end of the show. Nobody has ever this, that. It wasn't feeling organic. It wasn't feeling authentic like we're talking here. It was more, answer that question, you answer it in a robotic way. I don't do that. I engage. So when you come by me, you don't between the lines, you don't get what you get everywhere else. I make no apologies for it. Bill, free versus paid.
Well, I do everything as far as guests for free. It's just how I've always operated. But I think
Mm-hmm.
at some point there may be an opportunity for me to monetize it. I have in the past um, offered the download to like I would do the download of the podcast to somebody for free. So like or for a paid function.
Mm-hmm.
So I would produce that. The other thing I would do oftentimes is do a free version and then a paid version where you can keep the person on for a few extra minutes and say, hey, if you subscribe here, if you join here, listeners, you're going to get a little extra from this guest.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not on the paid guest end. It's on
Mm-hmm.
the end of the user
Mm-hmm.
paying for the stuff, and the guests never mind staying on for a few extra minutes and having that private conversation. I used to do that. We used to
That's
have
pretty cool.
a thing called 5 minutes of faith that we would do.
That's pretty cool. I actually like that. I actually like that. These are some really cool ideas. I hope you guys are listening and learning and picking up, even when you hear the baby in the background. Yeah. So, so that's really cool. There was something that's rolling around in my mind. When Bill said about charging for the audio, because when we put up the audio, anybody could download it, Leah. Anybody could download it. And that takes me back to that bridging the digital divide because traditional radio, that's how they make their money. If you want a copy of the recording, you normally have to pay for it. Even on TV, it's the same thing. You normally have to pay for it, right? That's how they make their money as well. Besides sponsors, they make their money because people will want to have a copy for themselves to use it as they may want to and that type of thing. But this is awesome, and there's nothing cast in stone to say you have to go free, you have to go paid at this particular time, at that particular time. As Leah and myself and Bill said, you work at your own pace, but obviously you have to build some sort of credibility, um, visibility, your following. Not that all of them may be really following you, honestly, because just a click of the mouse, which gives you a follow. But you really want to build that organic sort of relationship with your listeners and watchers. And that will take some time. And you're still even trying to figure out what really you should be talking about, what really is catching on. So for me, I have a wide set of topics, but I could figure the kind of things that people are more listening to is more about relationships, more about publishing. Yeah. Um, I guess there are certain times people might be listening to things about spirituality. A lot of people are now moving into that sort of realm. You know, as Leah mentioned, podcasting seems to be a hot topic now. So people may be listening to this, listening to other things, searching and finding. So you know, everything comes in different waves. Everything comes at different times. And it all depends on where that individual or group of people may be at a particular point in time that they need something. We just have no idea. We are sitting here wherever we are located and we don't know. And for all you know, there may be that particular episode on Leah's podcast that people just there's a spike. She'd be like, "Wow, something is happening. What's happening?" You know, that people just start listening to this all of a sudden. What? You know, something on Bill's show, something on my show. You just never know. But this has been good, people. I mean, we, as usual, 1 hour is almost up. We touched on podcast platforms. I have to say that slowly, and editing, and we spoke about free versus paid. And I would like to invite persons to follow us every Wednesday in the month of August. This is a continuous summit every week from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern, right? Um, Same place, same time. LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. Stay till the end. The outro video to this session of day 2 of the podcast summit, Between the Lines. You will see some information that is pertinent to you. I'm also going to share it on the screen shortly while I give the last 5 minutes to Leah and Bill to round up for us any final thoughts on what we discussed today or even what we discussed today and last week. Anything they would want to say. Leah, you go.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just whatever you decide to do, whichever platform, make sure again you're doing what's best for you based on what it is that you need. You want to make sure that you're showing up your authentic self. You want to make sure that you are providing quality over quantity. Don't get caught up in numbers because I think people get caught up in episode numbers and all that. Like, make sure that you're just providing the quality of service and the quality of content that you know that your audience wants to hear, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, yeah. Bill, anything you want to add to that? I think Bill just went to check in on his 15-month old. He's back. Yes.
Of course, he is now throwing the temper tantrum at the end of the podcast. But absolutely, just want to thank you guys. Remember to, I think the big thing for me, especially with platforms, remember to do your research, and don't forget to be creative in your show planning when it comes to editing, because when you create the structure through with creativity, doing different segments. I'll just say that I have a show called The Remnant on the Carolina Catholic Media Network, and what we do is we divide the show into 3 segments. So we have a news topic or a relevant topic, then we have a saint of the week. We pick a Catholic saint of the week, and then finally we have a challenge, and we spend an equal amount of time on all of that.
Mhm.
So when you look at that, I don't have to do much editing, right? Because I've got the content structure there. So just think about that as you go forward.
Awesome. And your 15-month-old has something to add, clearly. You see that's the thing. That's the thing when you have children. The children are so intuitive. They hear you speaking and they're like, I want to get in on that too. You alone cannot be having all the glory. I have something to say. Okay? I have something to say. So you see me featuring on the screen the mastermind. Let me just show that here one more time. So book your spot for the podcast mastermind. I'm going to put that link shortly in the comment section. The first 50 get in for free on or before today, so you know the data's gone. So now we have moved in to the second set of 50 persons because we're looking for 100 persons to join this mastermind. Okay. You get 50% off if you click on the link and put in your name before the 17th of this month, which is next week, Wednesday, when we have the third session. And everyone else after that will be full price. Don't get frightened about the price. Don't make that deter you. Put in your name, you just don't know where you would fall. You might end up being free, you might end up getting it at 50%. You just never know. So just take the chance, put in your name. And let me show you what you'll be getting. You'll be getting a 60-minute session twice a month. Okay, so every 2 weeks from September 7th to November 30th, so a 30-day period. The last day in November has 5 Wednesdays. So we are following along the same lines as this. So on that day, the 30th of November, we're going to have a free session where everybody come together and have a chat about the mastermind over the past 3 months. And you'll be able, at the end of the mastermind, sorry, you'll be able to launch your podcast in December. Isn't that awesome, Leon, to be able to launch your podcast in December? A gift to yourself and get your podcast. Or we're going to do everything from niching, everything we're talking about here, niching, starting your podcast platforms, even probably hiring Bill to help you with editing if you need it, whatever it is you need. And you can kickstart 2023 knowing that you've started your podcast. So let's use the time wisely. September 7th to November 30th, mastermind. Launch your podcast in December. Kickstart 2023. Yeah, I'm going to leave it on as a ticker here. Let me take this part off. And I just want to thank my guest, yes, Leah, for being here, and Bill and his 15-month-old son for being here. I have to give him some credit. It's been great. The conversation is always engaging. And please keep an eye out for what we'll be talking about next week. I look forward to seeing you guys, engaging with you guys again. Yeah, it's really awesome to be able to engage with your audience. This is what we podcasters are all about. Thank you so much. All the best. Have a great evening and see you next week.